so far removed from the idea of America and its minarchism written in the United States Constitution, where we have to bring her back to where she belongs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. Welcome to Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. I am your host, Roderick Threets, and I know some of you that are here on Mondays are like, "Oh no, what happened? What happened to the show, man?" So, just quick recap. We kind of revamped some things, moved some things around, reconsolidated, because there's too much politics throughout the whole week, and old man like me, there's a lot of politics. So I figured I would consolidate to fit the state back in the Southern Liberty. It was broken apart because there's so much stuff was going on. We had to separate it on 2 different days, but now that things are kind of slowing down and things are a bit more manageable, I reconsolidated to fit the state back into within Southern Liberty. And then the Sunday show, which we're doing now, Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy, we're actually doing it on Monday, where there's more listeners, more popularity, and all that good stuff. So this is what we're doing. All the other shows, the experience today will stay the same slide as Tuesday. We're moving this show from Sunday to Monday, and Sunday, I'm putting together a format for more of a lifestyle kind of chill kind of show. We'll talk about culture, society, survival, homemaking, things of that nature, stuff that people can really practically use on a daily basis. Because a lot of us Gen Xers and older that listen to this show, we have a lot of the knowledge of our parents that need to be passed down, and information need to be put out there for the younger generation to hear. So I think that's the direction we're going to go on Sundays. Just make it a real chill, and try to make it like a 2-hour chill kind of show, kind of bit. We're just talking about life and things of that nature. So be on the lookout for that here pretty soon. Liberty family. Please remember, make sure you are going to you check us out on the patreon.com/TOLMF. Make sure you're checking out our main website, torturelibertymedia.com, and my baby, the flagship of this whole thing, the Ninth Amendment Project. You can see that, ninthamendmentproject.org, and that's ninth with the number 9th, not NINTH. The number 9th, amendmentproject.org. Make sure you get it in over there and support us over there too. If there's anything that you do see that happens to come up during your course of your day, all that good stuff. Please let me know. You know how to get a hold of me. Get a hold of me through Patreon. You can email me at rthreats@torturelibertymedia.com. And if you're on social media, you know how to find me there. Man, address is 007 if you have your questions. But most of you that are on Patreon, you know how to get a hold of me through the chat, all that good stuff. So this is all good. This evening, we are on episode 6 of 8. Those of you that haven't been around for the Sunday shows, if you want something to listen to while you're doing dishes or whatever, go back into the feed, look at all the Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy episodes, 3 miniseries four that has happened. This is the 4th one. And there, I have it set up in 8 episodes apiece. We're on number 6. We're almost to the end. Almost to the end of this one. There'll be another one. We're not stopping the train. On this whole thing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get locked and loaded. Make sure you liking and sharing and subscribing and all that good stuff. I ain't gonna tell you how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, but get it in where you fit in. I greatly appreciate, and everybody in the chat greatly appreciates it 135,000%. This episode, as you can see on set screen, is the education of the Freeman. We're going to talk about a couple things that lean into that. Those of you that have been here, we talked about, we've secured the land, right? We've secured the courts, right? We even secured the currency, right? If you remember from the last three episodes, right? We've also built a fortress of logic and law, right? A perimeter of protection we call the shield, right? But here is the technical vulnerability we're going to get into, right? If the state holds a monopoly on how the next generation perceives reality, then the shield is nothing more than a decorated cage. And we've seen that, right? We've seen that. Education isn't just about facts and figures, right? In a technical sense, right? It's the operating system of the individual. If the state writes the code, the state defines the limit of your liberty, right? They teach you that the state is the provider of order rather than the protector of it. I know y'all seen this, you hear it. Some of you, get enraged like I do when we hear these people, right? We can't send people to school, have a great education. Do you have to send them to the state programming school? Enough about that though, right? But what they do, right? Listen, what they do in education, right? They teach you to seek permission rather than to exercise right? They train you to be a subject who functions within a system rather than a free man who can architect one, right? A free man cannot be manufactured on a assembly line or molded in a kiln or whatever, right? A free man is architect into the environment of choice, the environment of competition, and the environment of consequence, right? And today, we look at one of the final pieces of the minarchist puzzle we've been building, right? And it all starts here. We need to end the educational monopoly. Today, in this episode, I will explain to you and tell you how to reclaim the mind, because Lord knows some people need it. And that's it. I'm just saying that mildly. Some people need it. So I hope you got your notepads and pens and all that good stuff out. We got some work to do. We got some work to do, right? Now let's make no mistake, right? The reason people get into that don't exercise your right but ask for permission aspect, right, is because they think that's freedom, right? No sane people view public education as a pillar of a free society, right? A and it is, right? Don't get me wrong. It's a benevolent gift from the Enlightenment, right? But if you look at the blueprints, right, you'll find something darker, right? Because the modern school system of today, and I actually have a research piece already ready to post on Patreon here shortly, about this particular thing, right? So make sure you sign up on the Patreon so you can catch this, right? But the modern American school system is modeled after the 19th century Prussian industrial model, right? Now, let me put that into context a second for those of you that may not know Prussia, all that stuff, right? Following the defeat of the Prussian army by Napoleon, right, at the Battle of Jena, the Prussian state decided that the reason they lost was that their soldiers were thinking for themselves on the battlefield. They didn't want thinkers, they wanted automatic obedience. Doesn't that sound so familiar? Doesn't that sound so familiar? You can't think for yourself. It's dangerous. Hmm? If you're, I got to bring it up because it's so relevant, right? Because of the tone of my skin, I can't think for myself. And if I do think for myself, I'm voting for the wrong people. You know what I'm talking about. You hear it all the time, don't you? You hear exactly what I'm saying. This is what I'm talking about. This is the 19th century Prussian industrial model that we have in our schooling, and even to a point where it's permeated our society, right? Where it's exacerbated the race issue, which we all are tired of. Like, we want to beat people across the head because only thing on their mind is fucking race, right? Fuck that. Excuse my language. But these people that do that, what do they demand? Automatic obedience, or you're discarded like garbage, right? Remember, the Prussians designed a system to produce citizen soldiers who wouldn't question orders and citizen workers who could tolerate 10 hours of repetitive labor without revolt. Sound familiar, doesn't it? They invented the bells, the Rosa desk, the age segregated cohorts to break the individual will and replace it with collective submission. Now, mind you, when Horace Mann, right, Horace Mann, Mann, brought this model to the United States in the mid 1800s, he wasn't looking to create free thinkers. He was looking to Americanize the immigrant workforce into a compliant, manageable mass. Let's think about that a second. We're going to talk about the education of a free man because what we need to do ultimately is dismantle the compulsory attendance model, which is essentially a 12-year sentence of state sponsored molding and replacing it with intellectual sovereignty. That's the plan. Right? Now, this is first things first, before we get into breaking that all the way through, right? Let's get into the actual technical failure of centralized schooling, right? To understand why the current system fails the maximal individual, we have to apply the same economic logic we use for money in courts that we did in the previous two episodes, right? We're talking about the knowledge problem, right? Which was famously articulated by Friedrich Hayek. Y'all know who he is. Hopefully, you know who Friedrich Hayek is. F. A. Hayek. Human capital, right, is the most complex resource in existence. Okay. Just as a central planner cannot correct the price of bread in every town, a central board of education cannot know the optimal learning path for 30 million unique human minds, right? Centralization, and this is true with everything, right? If we look at our current United States model, this is true with everything, right? Centralization creates a signal failure, right? By forcing every child through the same curriculum at the same pace, the state creates an artificial average that serves no one. It stunts the genius and leaves it struggling behind, all while massive amounts of capital is frivolously spent. We know this is what it is. This is what our system is to a core. But look, I got solution. This is why we do this, right? See, let's flip the contrast though, right? In the Minarchy state we've been creating for almost a year now, right? The state, right? Y'all probably saying it in your head. I'm gonna say it for you. The state has no life or liberty interest in dictating what your child learns in a minarchist society, right? Right. As the title of the series, Beyond the Shield, comes to my head as I'm thinking about this, right? Beyond the Shield, like protecting children from physical abuse, right? And our education system is it goes from mental to physical, doesn't it? And in more ways than one, right? Education by default, right? Even under our current system, is supposed to be a private service. But we will see the rise of unbundling. We're going to go through it, right? We'll get through it because this is very important. Education is very important, and if the state's in charge, you get what you get, right? If we go back to the guild system, right? Returning to this historical model where a 14-year-old interested in engineering works directly with the master engineer, right? Or we could do the reputation market, right? In a world without state mandated certifications and diplomas and degrees and all this stuff, your credential, right, is your portfolio, right? Can you solve the problem? Can you build the bridge? Can you write the code? Can you? Right? This is why a lot of people hate meritocracy. Because there's a lot of us, right? And I mean, by no means I you know, I'm an average Joe. I'm not gonna pull a Gavin Newsom, right? Yeah, I double masters. Yes, I have that, right? But it's very specialized and very niched, right? But there's things, right, that I know better than lawyers do. And I never stood on the other side of the bar. Right? Some of you that listen, right? Some of you guys are, engineers or just common Joes, but know more about electrical engineering than an electrician does. You understand what I'm saying, right? That's the meritocracy where you've learned from life and you learn from people how to do the things you know, that sustain life and you get good at it. You get really good at it and you have all the knowledge in the world, but they won't let you set foot because you don't have a degree or a license to practice that skill. That's what we need to get back to. Here's the other part of the problem we need to solve, right? We have to separate the school and the state. I know how the people say separation of church and state. Well, we need a separation of school and state. Hmm? You don't talk about that. This is why they're big mad. Donald Trump is getting rid of the Department of Education. Well, most of your shit's already at state level anyway. Why do you need a federal oversight? Hmm? Why can't you be the oversight as the people? Oh, you don't trust yourself because it goes back to the start of my prompt, right? People are taught to ask for permission, right? But this is the thing, right? And some of you are going to ask, why is this separation of school and state a technical requirement for Minarchy? Why can't, and, the other question to be, some of you may ask is, why can't we just have better public schools? Because of incentive alignment. That's why, right? Now, keep in mind, right? The state is going to always operate and act to preserve the bureaucracy, right? Because keep in mind, right? And so confuse this with school charters, school vouchers and charters and things of that nature, right? But we're going to, I want to touch on the public choice theory, right? Because this is a deep part of the statism, and this is why it's very hard to separate school from state, right? Because public choice theory tells us that bureaucrats, right, people you don't elect, act in their own self-interest, right? When the state funds the schools become inevitably an arm of the state's self-promotion, right? You will never find a state-funded curriculum that objectively analyzes the technical failures of school-funded programs. So it becomes a closed loop of indoctrination. Look, an example. Let's look at the student loan crisis, right? This isn't a failure of the market. This is the failure of state distortion, right? By subsidizing specific paths, usually they're high cost, right? Because we hear the people taking loans are $100,000 in debt, $250,000 in debt, right? And it is. It's usually these high cost, low utility university degrees that the state has created a debt trap, right? It's the technical equivalence of indentured servitude. I went there because it is what it is, right? How do you pay yourself out of $250,000 in debt for a degree? How do you pay out of that? On top of the interest, how do you pay out of that once you become a dope boy? And then they're putting your ass in jail, and you still owe the freaking loan when you get out of prison, if you get out, right? That's that closed loop of indoctrination. That's that indentured servitude you can't get away from. They'll use you and abuse you, right? They will use you and abuse you, violating your right to self ownership and staking claim to the fruits of your labor, which is your property. If that's not indentured servitude, I don't know what is. Hmm? Think about this a minute. These young, so-called supposedly free people, right? When they graduate college, they again, I was talking about, right? They're owing six figures to the system, right? Which essentially forces them into safe corporate jobs to service the interest, right? They are captured or captors before they even have the chance to be sovereign. I mean, most of us that has degrees know exactly what I'm talking about. Especially if you paid for them outright, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But again, right, we talk about the solution to the problem over here, right? So let's talk about what we would do in our minarchist state, our minarchist nation, right? First of all, it's a no-brainer that we're going to absolute separate school and state, right? Because there is a market for truth. Let me explain that, right? When schools have to compete for every dollar, They can no longer afford to prioritize ideology over competence, can they? You won't no longer have these teachers in schools that are pro Antifa, pro Palestine, all that stuff in the school. They can't afford it, right? Because remember, our schools are the breeding grounds for the culture war. If we separate school and state, that stuff goes away. Because ain't nobody going to send their son or daughter to a school that has people that are in there talking about rioting against the government, right? Or drag queen story hour. That's not going to happen. Your school's going to shut down because you can't get no people to sign up for your school and pay for it. The free market of truth is a great tool. Huh. the, the other part of that, right? The voucher Fred freedom, right? If you're wanting classical education, you have to pay for it. If you want a tech heavy trade path, you pay for it. No neighbor is forced at gunpoint to pay for a curriculum they find morally or technically bankrupt. Y'all hear what I'm telling you, right? Now, we remove the state in our society. And guys, make sure before we continue on and get to the towards the back end here. Um, Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Keep it locked in here. We'll do the things. We'll talk about a better nation, better outcomes. Right. But back to where we were, right? If we remove the state, what does the education of a free man actually look like? Right. I know that's what some of you are probably already thinking. I know, I got you, as always, right? Because it doesn't it will never look like a different version of the same classroom, right? Because it looks like it's self-directed learning, right? Mind you, let me explain this a little bit, right? In a society that is governed by the non-aggression axiom, right? The most important skills are not ever going to be found in a textbook, right? And there's three things you're not going to find in that textbook of the state, right? You're not going to find anything about contractual literacy. You're not gonna find anything in there about epistemology, or nor are you gonna find anything about the ethics of property. Right? Those are the three things you will never see in a state textbook or a state contractor's textbook, because they don't they still want you to submit to the system, right? They can't have you recognizing that your body and your labor is only solely yours, right? The ethics of property, right? They don't want you. They've already told you, right? They don't want you thinking for yourself, right? Right? They don't they want to teach you what to think, not how to think, right? And the complete opposite of that is what? Epistemology, right? That's the complete opposite, right? And obviously contractual literacy, right? Your word is your bond, is it not? We make oral contracts every day, don't we? Every day. Especially folks in relationships and marriages, right? That I love you is a contractual agreement, hmm? After the fact. Hmm? Or I'll come down and help you with that We're putting that palm tree in the ground here a little bit. It's a contractual agreement, isn't it? Mm. This is how we got the saying that promises are made to be broken because people fail at contractual literacy. When you see if your word is bond, you better uphold that contract to that person that you made that contract with. See, in our minarchist state, and we're going to be rolling out here shortly. In our minarchist state, I want you guys to understand, right? The operating system of the mind needs to be based on internalized law, which is non-aggression axiom, right? Which is contractual literacy, epistemology, and the ethics of property, right? This in itself is the ultimate technical efficiency. You don't need a cop or sheriff's deputy on every corner or a regulator in every office if the citizens have been educated to respect property rights as a technical necessity for their own survival, right? This is where we have to shift the mindset of the people. We have to shift from the fear of the state with the respect for the contract. And this is exactly how a minimal state stays minimal. When the people are too independent to be bought and too sovereign to be ruled. I mean, this was the initial basis of the Constitution of the United States. This was the basis of that piece of paper. People are supposed to be independent, can't be bought or sold. And only government is only giving consent to govern, which should nowadays, I will say this out loud, can be revoked at any time by any of the sovereign citizens, quote unquote, not sovereign citizens like these fools on the road. I'm talking about you being sovereign, you being, independent to be able to take the damn bitch down. But they told you not to look over here while we build this wall between me and you, so you can't do that. The government does not respect the contract. And we're talking right now, the U.S. government as a whole does not respect the contract. People going to say, Rod, what contract is that? It's the United States Constitution. I will keep saying this till I'm blue in the face every day. That document was signed by the several states to create the federal government, not the other way around. The states are the federal government, but the people have allowed the federal government to block themselves off, and they can run roughshod and buck wild across all the people and step on their rights at will. But people want to sit here and argue about race. The fear of the state is so bad that they will point at the individual that is sitting in the office of the U.S. president and say they're doing everything under God to be a Nazi. Those same people, right, that made attempts on the person. Well, let me say this. Let me word this differently, right? Anybody that makes an attempt on the occupant of the office of the U.S. president, you have no respect for the contract, and you are really in fear of the state. Really, you are that really in fear. It's past fear of the state at this point. People like y'all should be discarded and disposed and deposed at the same time. Because the fact of the matter is, you think the occupant of the office of the United States president is going to take your rights and things from you when that person doesn't even have that power to do it. It's the people that are sitting at the daises in the committees and on the floor voting aye and nay on the bills. It ain't the president. It ain't the occupant of the office of the U.S. president. It's those 535 people sitting down there in that place called the legislative branch of government. One is the House of Representatives, and the other one is the Senate. You should be mad at them, but you won't be mad at the person sitting in the office of the U.S. United States president. Your fear of the state, right? The fact that you fear the state that much, you don't respect contracts. Look how nasty you treat people, right? That are not of the same belief, right? Circling back to the beginning, right? You don't respect the contract between people to live as free and independent people. You got to bring them in and try to group them together and try to chastise them. Well, it can work two ways. These people that want to make these attempts on the person that is in the office of the U.S. president, you fear again. You people fear the state so much, you think you're doing the world good by taking out the head of that, but the bureaucracy is what's going to get you, and it will get you every single time. And they can do it with no warrant. In closing, I want people to understand that liberty isn't a vague feeling or a political slogan, right? It's a technical framework. How I believe, how I conduct myself, and how I preach about this, and I hope everybody feels the same way about the way they feel and operate. It's not a political slogan for you to ram in my face. You don't have enough knowledge to be here. And I hope everybody feels like that. My ideology is not a lifestyle. My ideology is life or death. We don't play in the kiddie pool. We're adults. We don't play in the kiddie pool. The state is a parasite of responsibility. It only grows where there's a vacuum of individual action. Every time these people, let's say not see these people, every time the people say there ought to be a law or the government should fix this, you're handing over a brick from your own shield to build a monument for a bureaucrat. For those of you in the back didn't hear it, I'm going to say it again. Every time you turn around and you say the government needs to do this and they need to pass a law for that, you are building a monument for a bureaucrat out of your own shield. The maximal individual, right, doesn't ask for a solution. They architect one. They don't look for a leader. They look for a contract. They don't wait for permission to exercise their inherent rights. With that, I got a couple questions for y'all to mull over until next week. And again, I enjoy y'all being here, listening, doing the things, taking in the information. I know some of it's a little different for some of you to hear. I don't want it to be difficult. I want it to be the easy as possible because freedom is easy. You just have to know how to exercise it. Right. But what I want y'all to do before I close out, I want you to look at your own life and think about one area that you may be operating on state permission, right? Is it your money or your professional license, your children's minds? And then if you're able to, find a private alternative, build a contract, join the lodge of people doing it. I mean, we seen it happen during COVID with the homeschool moms, right? That's a great example, right? They found a private alternative. They built their own contracts with whoever's doing the schooling. They opt out of the fiat, and I'm gonna use a slogan they use in Congress nowadays. They reclaim their time. See, because what you understand, the light of liberty only burns as long as there are people willing to hold the torch, even when the wind is blowing. And I got a feeling that all of us are on that same path. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all to the max. Hopefully that you guys are getting comfortable with the transition from Sunday to Monday with this show. Um, Again, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff with your peeps. And guys, remember, we'll be back Tuesday. Me and Miss Val, the experience today. We're gonna talk about a couple of things, I hope. And guess what? She did one on me. I know what the show's going to be on Tuesday. Ha ha. I can prepare it. I don't think she's ready for this. Anyway, hey y'all, I love y'all. Make sure to love your neighbors, love your family, but ultimately love yourself. God bless everyone. Good night.